welcome to Cindy's Library. This is Cindy, and today I am going to talk about the books that I have read for the first half of the month of August. So let's get to it. First of all, I finally finished this one, The Cause, The American Revolution and Its Discontents, 1773 to 1783, by Joseph J. Ellis. He is well known in academic circles on the Revolution. This is actually a pretty short book to go through everything in the Revolution. So there is that. But there are a couple interesting points that he brings up here. Let's see. And one nice thing is at the end of every chapter, he does a brief sketch of someone we usually don't talk about in the Revolution. So there is that. A couple interesting things. The French Revolution is admired for attempting to implement its radical agenda all at once and failing. The war for American independence is criticized for deferring its full promise and succeeding. We can and should argue about the wisdom of that deferral strategy. There will be those who embrace the conviction that justice delayed is justice denied, but they must contend with the inconvenient truth that any attempt to implement the full meaning of the cause would have undermined the unity necessary to win the war and therefore render American independence possible. So, yes, the American Revolution did not do very well by Native Americans or by African Americans, specifically slaves. And yet, would they have been able to accomplish the American Revolution and those things at the same time? Good argument that they wouldn't have. And it's also true that the ideas the American Revolution embraced, that was the first time there had been such ideas. Would such ideas have arrived later without it, in which we would have recognized some of the other issues that are criticized today? Well, it's hard to say. But I enjoyed it. Oh, one more thing. Two sides to the Revolution. The individualistic, very much state side that everyone embraced. Defending your locale, using local resources, the Minuteman tradition, and then continental scope, which slowly grew with the Continental Congress and the Continental Army, and yet was at the same time, the longer the war went on, more and more discredited in its own way, even though in some ways it was exactly what was needed. So we have two traditions coming out of the Revolution, both that have affected American society ever since. And the disunity forces were so prevalent and overwhelming, with only a few dissidents like George Washington and Alexander Hamilton and Robert Morris dissenting. We forget that when the war actually won, there was not a glimmer of the Constitutional Convention yet. that would take another 4 years to actually appear and actually come to fruition. But it wasn't even a glimmer when the war actually ended. And given that perspective, there's no guarantee that what the war had brought about would be successful. So I finished that. Not a bad place to start if you're into American Revolution or want to learn more. I also read Thank You, Jeeves. This one all starts with Bertie Wooster getting into trouble because he has decided he wants to learn the banjo. And he is driving his London neighbors crazy. Even Jeeves disapproves and quits. And so, what happens? Jeeves gets hired by one of Bertie's friends who has a house in the country, lots of debt, falling apart, needs financial help, has a girl he wants to marry, has some prospect from some money if a will goes his way, and if that happens, his father will let them marry. And the same friend also invites Bertie to live at a cottage there, since he's basically been banished from his apartment in London for playing the banjo. And things go on from there, of course. And of course, it also takes the brain power of Jeeves to unravel everything and give everyone a happy ending, including himself this time. One has to wonder why, somewhat, that someone like Jeeves wants to serve someone like Bertie Wooster. I mean, Jeeves could serve whoever he wants. You know he could. So the only thing I can think of is whatever else Bertie Wooster might be, he does honestly have a good heart. A lot of the pickles he gets into is because he's trying to help out friends in one way or another. Or he's so tender-hearted he can't refuse his Aunt Dahlia. Or he gets scared by his Aunt Agatha. So, he does, I think, admire Bertie's good heart. He does also enjoy a challenge. So that must be why. Very fun though, always a good time with Jeeves and Wooster. Let's see. Next. Oh, I read Surprised by Oxford by Carolyn Weber. Carolyn, she grew up with a complicated family. She was also brilliant and managed to get a scholarship to Oxford. And she's an English major and was studying the Romantics. Not sure she would have gone as far as saying she was atheist exactly. Or maybe she would have, certainly agnostic when she arrived there. But the more she learned, the more she had to take Christianity seriously. It's interesting because it's a conversion story, not of my specific religion myself, which is the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. and yet so much of it sounded familiar to me from conversion stories from my own faith tradition. Pulled me through. Glad I read it. If nothing else, a lot of these ideas have been around for a very, very long time. I also read Romeo and Juliet, which has some of the most beautiful passages in the English languages. I first read this when I was in, I want to say, ninth grade. Wrong age for me. I did not understand teenagers then. And as far as that part of the story goes, I'm still not sure it's my favorite, but I can appreciate it a lot more. It is a tragedy, of course. You have uh, two different families, um, two households, both alike in dignity in fair Verona, where really are seen. From ancient grudge breaks to new mutiny, where civil blood makes civil hands unclean. So you got these two houses, the Montagues and the Capulets, who have been feuding. I'm not even sure even the oldest people on either side know what the feud is actually about anymore. And the princess warned them not to stir up trouble anymore because is it twice or thrice when they cause another disturbance at the very beginning? And the prince is tired of it and he says, knock it off or else, because it's affecting other citizens. And we are then introduced to Romeo, a Montague, and Juliet, who is a Capulet. Romeo and some friends sneak into a Capulet party where he meets Juliet, and it's love at first sight. And at first you think maybe things will work out, but it's a tragedy, so of course they don't, which is very sad. Glad I reread this. And finally, I read the last two volumes in part 3 of Ascendance of a Bookworm. So, Mine, Rose, Mine, I should say now, in spite of having to learn to be a noble and solving duchy level problems and things like that, her real interest, of course, is books, creating books, improving literacy, improving the processes on every dimension that will make books more affordable and easier to make, helping people that she cares about too. We also have been getting specific ingredients for a potion that is supposed to make Rosemary healthy again. And all of that comes to a head rather dramatically by the end of the last book. Once again, there are occasional illustrations. We also have the front illustration, which is two-sided, the first one being larger of the front cover. And couple bonus stories from other perspectives, and even little comics. So, things when we start part 4 will be very different for Rosemary. Interesting to see what happens. Anyway, that is what I have read the first half of August. How's your reading gone so far? I'd love to hear what you're reading about. Thank you so much for stopping by. I truly do appreciate it. So until next time, hope we all stay safe and happy. And as always, happy reading.